to the, well, I'm like, well, I can, right. Yeah, go ahead.
All right, let's call this meeting of September 26, 2023. Order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Will the clerk please take the roll?
Councilmember Johnstone? Here. Councilmember Richardson?
Present.
Councilmember Crossman?
Here.
Councilmember Smith? Here. Councilmember Hess? Here. Councilmember Brooks? Here. Councilmember Kibitsky? Here. Mayor Joe DePinto?
Here. Thank you. And Shelby's cross-training tonight on some clerk stuff. So thank you very much for being here. All right. Can we look at agenda approval? Councilmember Hess.
I move that we approve the agenda as written.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Kaminsky. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to special presentations, just none scheduled. Moving on to public comment, we have a couple. If you do want to go ahead and do your turn speaking to the council myself, go ahead and please fill out a blue note cards right outside. Give you 3 minutes to go ahead and talk about whatever you want. Let's start off with George and Troop 164.
Good evening. My name is George Ignatiusville, Sector 4th with Boy Scout Troop 164 here based out of the American Legion here in Yelm. I'm here today to give my popcorn sales pitch in hopes of raising some funds for my troop. This year, my goal is $2,500. I'm currently just over $500 from reaching this goal. Once my goal is reached, my big annual summer camp would be paid for. Any donations or sales raised after my goal is reached will go into help funding other scouting activities such as merit badges, our monthly campouts, and allowing us to help our local community. If you are local to Yelm and would like us to order some great flavored popcorn, I would happily deliver your order personally after November 11th. If not, we have the option to place your order online and have it shipped to your home. My favorite option is the Heroes and Helpers Fund. This is where we take monetary donations and to send our military and first responders these tasty treats. Over the last few years, my troop has personally donated thousands of dollars worth of popcorn to our Yelm and Bald Hill Fire Departments, the Yelm Police Department, 2 different food banks, and Yelm Family Medicine. Last year, our council donated a lot of popcorn to our military at JBLM. Now, I appreciate being given the time to speak in front of the council. Being here also helps me and my fellow scouts earn requirement 3 of the merit badge citizenship in the community. If there are any questions, I gladly answer them now or after the meeting.
Thank you, George.
Thank you. Have a great night.
All right, Stephanie.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Kingeiser. I'm running for City Council, Position 1. I serve on the board for Yelm Chamber of Commerce, and I've recently been reelected as our Yelm Dollars for Scholars Secretary. I have served on the committees for things like the barbecue rally.
And I'm sorry, Stephanie, we can't allow campaigning on the at council meetings. If this is any other city
Can I
business,
strike that? Or
if you can strike that and go to whatever other.
up here?
Absolutely.
Okay. What do I strike?
No, just go ahead and speak about whatever else that you want.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Can I say that I'm on the chamber?
absolutely.
Okay. So I'm on the Chamber of Commerce. I have recently been reelected as Yelm Dollars for Scholars Secretary. I've served on committees for things like the barbecue rally and other events that have been hosted in the park. I wanted to take just a moment to say that I am excited to see the beautification of our main street, the discussions of sidewalks, and the construction of the stage coming to our Yelm City Park. This will create a warm, welcome, and fulfilling environment. I appreciate the amenities added to bring people to Yelm and keep people in Yelm. I look forward to the discussions tonight that will be taking place later in the meeting, and just wanted to advocate for the stage that makes a big difference in a lot of the things that we do here in our own Yelm City Park. Thank you for being transparent with our community and our businesses and for correcting me. I appreciate that.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else from the public that wishes to speak? All right, moving on. Anyone online?
We don't have any hands up.
All right, moving on to the consent agenda. We have September 2023 meeting minutes. Councilmember Hess.
I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second by Councilmember Johnstone. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Motion carries. All right, under new business, we have resolution 641 adopting the city of Yelm utility shutoffs for non-payment during extreme. Erica, would you please step up? This is your first time, I believe, maybe second, briefing the council.
First time briefing the council. Hi, I'm Eric. I'm the utility clerk here. This recent session, the legislature enacted the House Bill 1329, which put into place a program for people to allow their water to be turned on during extreme heat events. This policy and resolution would just bring us into line with the state law that was passed. So that's, any questions for me on that?
Councilor Richardson.
I was just reading the part below where it talks about absent a heat advisory, shutoffs for non-payment will still occur as normal. And then it says, in gross substitute House Bill 1329 became effective as of July 23rd. So here's what gets me is which requires allowing customers shut off for non-payment means to reinstate service without first making a payment.
Correct.
So they would reinstate it.
They have to make the request during, and then we have to make a reasonable attempt to do so during business hours. Part of what we have put in here is that in order to do so, they would have to enter into a payment agreement with us. The law addresses that as well as in our policy that the agreement can be for no more than 6% of their monthly income. And then it would need to be wrapped up by May 15th of the following year or as close to that to stay within that 6%.
So that basically the city will get the payment for the service.
Correct.
Okay, that's all.
Yeah, no, we would not just be turning people on and being like, okay, well, gee, that's so sad for us. No, we would make sure that we enter into a payment agreement and make sure that we allow them to pay on that overtime, similar to what we did during COVID. In that we made contracts or payment agreements for people to pay overtime to get that balance taken.
That makes a lot more sense. I just get worried when there's services provided and there's no payment received. And
Correct.
That's not going to fly.
Yeah.
So thank you for the explanation on that.
Any other questions for council? Councilor Hess.
You said they have to apply during the extreme heat.
They would need to make a phone call and just say, we understand that a heat advisory has been issued. We would like to have our water service reinstated. And then at that point, we would enter into a conversation and say, there's a payment agreement in order to do that, or you can just take care of your past due balance. And then we can get that reinstated for you within our normal business hours.
Councilor Crossman.
I move to approve resolution number 641.
Second.
Second by Councilor Smith. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those say nay. Motion carries. Thank you, Erica.
Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Moving on to item B under new business, adoption of the City of Yelm ADA transition plan for public right of ways. Pat.
That's here. Good evening, Mayor, Council. As you all know, we've been working on our ADA transition plan here for a number of months. And we finally come to the point where we've got it complete and ready for adoption. We have to adopt this plan. We've been working with Al King of King Technologics, and I'm going to have him come up and say a few things just to give you a little bit of history about this, mostly because some of you weren't on council when he gave his last presentation back in April. So I'm going to bring Al up here right now and let him just kind of walk you through where we're at and how we got to this point.
Thank you, Pat. It's been several months, as Pat noted, since I've been here, and it's been an interesting ride. And I have to say, it's been really pleasant working with Pat and with Cody to get this project done. They've been extremely responsive and effective in their responses. The Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990 requires public entities with more than 50 employees to have an ADA transition plan, which means that you have a plan to take care of your sidewalks, in particular, your pedestrian ramps and push buttons. Since you don't have any signals, you don't have to worry too much about that. You can then include sidewalks, which is the current plan. In order to have that plan in place, there are a number of things that are required. You have to have a named ADA coordinator. That's Mr. Stansel. You have to provide notice about the ADA requirements. That's been covered. That you have to have a grievance procedure and appeal process. You already had essentially that in place. We've updated that. And you have to have standards for the ADA facilities. That's really pretty straightforward because there are standards under what's called the PROWAG. I won't even try to give you the acronym for that, and both state and city standards. All of those things are done, so that puts you in a great position. In the plan, you have to have an inventory of all of your ramps. The next item on the agenda is to take care of that along with the sidewalks. You have to have methods to remove those barriers, which really is simpler than it might sound. It's basically fix the ramps, replace them if necessary, or put them in on a priority basis. You have to have a schedule and budget for upgrades. That's probably the biggest item that a complaint would, the Department of Justice would look at in the event of a complaint, is whether or not you have a schedule and budget. That's in the plan here, and a priority methodology. Everyone, including the DOJ, understands that you can't just go through, there's no agency in the country that can just go through and upgrade everything overnight. Just not financially feasible. Having a priority methodology then allows you to do it in a reasonable manner to address those things that need addressing first. And you must maintain a record of opportunity for public engagement. Where are we? We've gone through the city code. It's been updated. The city website's been reviewed. The updates are there. The notice has been updated. The coordinator position description has been updated. The online grievance form was completed. The plan is complete as of hopefully this evening, and I will make the final revisions to take out draft. And then the record of opportunity has been completed. Interestingly, and not unusual, the feedback from a pretty extensive public outreach effort was zero. And to put that in perspective, City of Bremerton, for example, I did a couple of years ago, zero. So you're in good company. And all that's left really is for the council to adopt the plan. Any questions?
Any questions for staff? Councilmember Crossman.
If I was to walk from like Yelm High School down to Yelm Walmart, will I notice any big changes because of this?
Not because of the plan. It's going to depend entirely on your construction program.
Any other questions? Councilmember Crossman.
I move to approve the ADA transition plan for the public rights of way.
Second by Councilmember Hess. Just beat it just by a tad. Is there any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Motion carries. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
Moving on to professional services agreement with IDAX or IDEX Data Solutions. Sidewalk and curb ramp survey. Pat.
So as a result of approving our ADA plan, it's time to implement what we said we were going to do in there. The first step is to do an inventory of all of our sidewalks, ADA, ramps, push buttons, et cetera, to determine their condition, their compliance with ADA requirements. So we have contracted with a firm, hopefully upon approval tonight, to use them to do this survey for us. It's kind of a neat system. They use LiDAR actually to go out and do this survey on the sidewalks, basically spraying thousands of points of light on there, and using that information helps to calculate the for example, the slope and the width of a particular ramp, and do all these calculations to determine whether or not a ramp is in compliance, all within a matter of less than a second. So it's kind of interesting technology that's come about. So I'm looking forward to this. So what we will do is get this started right away. I'm asking tonight for council to approve a professional service agreement with IDEX Data Solutions, and in the amount not to exceed $42,874.39 for performing this sidewalk and ramp survey. I did obtain 3 quotations from 3 firms that can do this all over the country. They're not local, they're all over. So this was the most favorable proposal that met our specific needs for the best value. So if you've got any questions about that process or the approval of that professional services agreement.
So Member Smith.
So I'm curious. So they would come out here and they would do that fairly quickly. And then it would go to prioritize what we're going to do. Is that kind of?
Yes, it would. Yeah.
Okay.
It would determine, for example, on our sidewalk ramps, whether they are currently compliant or not compliant with ADA, and determine what would need to be done. So the idea would be to prioritize them into the ones that are in compliance, substantially in compliance, those needing minor repairs, or those that maybe need rebuilding. So
Are they, for this amount of money, are they doing everything? Are they doing the, like you said, the signals or the push buttons?
yes, we're doing all of our sidewalk ramps. We have 731 ADA sidewalk ramps in the city.
Wow.
We have 41 miles of sidewalk, and they will be doing all of that in just a few days.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilor Richardson.
So it's everything that's just pre-existing?
That's everything that's currently existing. All new construction must, of course, be built in accordance with ADA standards. I suspect that most of our newer ramps in town are fine and meet that requirement already.
Councilor Crossman and then Johnstone.
Why can't we save the taxpayers $42,000 and just use common sense? Like, hey, that sidewalk there is obviously needs to be fixed, or
Because there's a lot of measurements. First of all, we don't have the staff to do it manually. There's a lot of measurements that need to be done. They're outlined in the ADA transition plan that you just adopted. It would take a pretty significant amount of staff time to do all that work. This can be done pretty rapid, and we can get our plan in much quicker.
can we just do it as people say, hey, we need this fixed here, we need this fixed there?
Can't do that. We have said in our plan that what we're going to do is an inventory of all facilities. All facilities located within the public right-of-way are considered to be a service of the city of Yelm, and therefore they have to comply. We don't know if they comply until we do certain measurements on them to determine whether or not they meet these. There's several requirements, not just width and slope and so forth. So sure, we could do it the old-fashioned way and manually do it, but we need the staff to do it. And it's going to take a considerable amount of time to measure that amount of sidewalk and those gaps.
The public.
I got LiDAR.
It probably costs more in salary dollars.
Any other questions? Councilor Johnstone.
If the survey finds that certain areas are deteriorated, does it start a clock on how long the city has to repair them to be compliant?
Oh, as Al explained just a moment ago, what this will do is will help us create a plan, help us create a remedial action, attach it with a budget. Once we know what we need to do, we can then prioritize what needs to be done. Obviously, the things that are most out of compliance will probably be higher priority. And depending on what needs to be done, what needs to be fixed, repaired, or replaced, will help us develop the budget to do that. So this will be our tool to help determine that.
Councilor Brooks, did you still have a question? I thought I asked someone. Nope. Councilor Hess.
In reference to the inventory, when it comes across, and because we've had a lot of new construction done, if it comes across that for development that they are out of compliance? Is it the city's responsibility to put it into compliance, or can we reach out to the developer and say, you know the rules, you know what had to be, you're the one that needs to fix it?
Understood. It's quite likely that anything that was recently constructed within the last 2 or 3 years, for example, they were inspected when they were done. So they made sure that they did comply at the time. It would be highly unusual to come across a newer sidewalk ramp that did not already comply.
Would you indulge us and tell us what would happen if they did?
Well, first of all, it depends upon whether or not it's under warranty. Most construction contracts run with a 12-month, 1-year construction warranty. We could call them and have it repaired.
Thank you. Councilor Richardson.
So Pat, this is like 42,000 plus just to take a look at things. I can do that for you.
Are you sure?
I don't know.
Any other questions, comments? Councilmember Hess.
I'd like to move that we authorize Mayor DePinto to sign a professional service agreement with IDAX Data Solutions in the not to exceed amount of $42,870.39 for performing a sidewalk and curb ramp survey for ADA compliance.
Second by quick draw on Mr. Richardson, Councilmember Richardson. All right, let's do a roll call vote just to be sure. Councilmember Johnstone, or excuse me, is there any further discussion? Let's take a roll call vote. Councilmember Johnstone, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councilmember Richardson?
Yes.
Councilmember Crossman?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Hess?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Kaminsky? Yes. Motion carries. All right. Thank you, council. Thank you, Pat. Thank you, Mr. King, if he's still here. All right, moving on to ordinance number 1104, amending chapter 18.39 of the Yelm Municipal Code. Gary, I believe this is you.
I was gonna tag Pat out trade.
Oh, you want to say here?
I'm lazier than you. I want to say. This is Todd. Let's say I just like Todd. I think just change the name.
Yeah, we'll stack of nameplates.
Good evening, council. So yes, I'm here to ask your approval of ordinance 1104, which would amend our municipal code to allow senior 55 and over rental housing communities in the city's industrial zone. Which I know that sounds odd, but our industrial zone currently allows several different types of senior living facilities. So I'll just read them off here. Currently allowed, and these are allowed as special uses. So they're not just outright permitted, they have to go to the hearings examiner. We have convalescent care facilities, assisted living facilities, congregate care facilities, and senior centers, which are currently already allowed as special uses. So we had a request from a property owner in the area, Robert Sternoff. There's a narrative from him in the packet here describing the property. It's been in his family for about 26 years. Used to have rail service, does not now. He's really interested in trying to supply more housing stock to the city. And is particularly interested in affordable senior housing. So that's the origin of the request. It looked to be consistent with around the surrounding allowed uses for that area. And then also just in terms of hitting some of our other objectives for housing in general. Our latest stat from TRPC, Thurston Regional Planning Council, is that in the next 20 years, we're going to need to supply 7,250 new housing units in the city of Yelm. And the projected growth is, we're about 11,000 now. It's projected to be 24,000. It's really difficult to keep up with housing stock at any income level, and particularly for affordable. So for all those reasons, we're recommending that you approve it. It just adds a single line to the industrial chapter of our zoning code.
For this development, would it be considered low, medium, or high density?
Density?
Yeah.
That hasn't been established yet. We'd be looking at this as a kind of an overlay zone to see what the actual proposal is as a special use, kind of like we've done in the master plan community. So that's not established. there are really no specific standards set for this. We would review it through the special use process through the hearings examiner, make recommendations at that time.
Councilor Richardson.
Gary, you said that it adds a line to the whole industrial description of the usage. So then that would be the only change. It still could be used for industrial.
Oh, yeah. So it just adds one allowed special use. It doesn't take anything.
Okay, so it doesn't take anything away.
Right.
It just adds more usage to that verbiage. Also, that would help, like you said, help with our growth management plan and meet the numbers that we're required to meet by a certain year.
Yeah, it certainly would. And we're actually required now by state law to enter, we're engaged in this process right now through Thurston Regional Planning and all the other cities. Commerce has set numbers that the counties are obligated to meet for all levels of affordable housing, like extremely low, low, and those numbers are being distributed throughout the cities and all the counties. So we have an obligation to try to supply housing stock at all income levels. It's difficult to do.
Any further questions, council? Councilor Johnstone.
I move to approve ordinance number 1104, amending chapter 18.39 of the Yelm Municipal Code to allow senior 55 and over communities as a special use.
Second.
Second by Councilor Crossman. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. It carries. All of you. Thank you, Gary. Sure. All right, moving on to item E, Yelm City Park Stage change order from Nisqually Construction. Cody, please tell us about this change order.
Yes, so before council is a change order for the stage. The original contract or the original bid was as you may remember, was done by St. Martin's to create a project. The project they designed was great, but it just didn't fit really what we needed. So when Nisqually Construction bid on it, they bid on that current project. We got into discussion with them and kind of upscaled the project a little bit. What that included was moving all the electrical in the entire city park to this stage to provide for events. One big thing we always run into during events is popping breakers. If you've been in an event, So we pulled everything to a single high amp panel with a spider box inside the new stage. We increased the apron of the stage, so allow for more seating that would be in a concreted area versus mud. We also tore down or had the pavilions in that original or in the new contract that added the tear down of pavilions and establishment of grass in those areas. And we also added a backstage to the pavilion that would allow a new group of performers to get ready while the current group was performing. That all goes into this new amount. And I'd be happy, I'll just address, they did start work under the original contract. They're still under the budget of the original contract right now. And that's if they will continue work under that original contract until council approves this, and then we'll go from there. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Councilor Smith.
So we have a contract with them.
Correct.
None of this stuff was thought about before. I mean, you said the boxes and the electrical stuff. And so now they want another $233,000. I mean, but we were in contract with them.
Correct. The original bid, so let me clarify, I guess. The original bid did not include some of the design stuff they added on. What happened in that scenario is we went to Public Service Committee and Parks Advisory Committee to get buy-off on a new design. That new design we knew would cost more at some point, but would not cost more until they actually got to construction. That's where the change orders come from, is the greater design that was done, that Public Services Committee had signed off on in late February, is what is going to cost more now that they started constructing.
So Public Services Committee, I'm just trying to understand, Public Services Committee made changes or said they wanted changes. And that's, okay, I don't know. I feel like it's the first time I've heard of it. I mean,
Yeah. If I remember correct, also it was presented either during a study session or even during council member comments about the Public Service Committee, that these were changes that were being brought up. And I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Director Colt, we were looking at like maybe $100,000 to $150,000 difference at the time. And that it was briefed, it was talked about. for this, that it wasn't just a public service committee that made the changes without notifying anybody else. It was brought up during a council meeting as well. Is there a recollection of that, or am I recalling incorrectly? Because
I believe there was a study session where we talked about the stage design. We did mention that there'd be a budget amendment at some point. We just didn't know what the number would be at the time. But it was brought up, but we did not dive into exactly the number, because we didn't know the number at the time, how much it would be.
And also, I wish she was still here, the director of finance, but the funding site that this is coming from is specific for just parks, public buildings, basically capital improvements.
REIT money.
And it's REIT money collected from when a house is sold. And from what I understand, we are looking at, by the end of the year, a little over $500,000 that we are hoping to have in that. And if we use this money, it just brings that $500,000 to about 200 and some odd $1,000. But we don't have anything else budgeted for it at this time, nor anything budgeted for it next year. Is that correct?
Partially correct. So yes, it does come from REIT money. There is excess fund in there. I think the number after this would be around $500,000. The number right now is around 700. So.
Councilmember Smith.
I'm just trying to wrap my head around this. So the council approved the original budget.
Correct, the original budget line. Correct.
The council approved it. Then the city / public works made changes. But those changes, this is now where they're coming to council. Is that right? Okay. All right.
So, sorry, it was at a study session. It was brought up with the extra designs.
No, with the study session, it would.
There was no official, this is the official,
Okay.
if you approve of it or not. If you don't approve it, we'd like.
But I don't think there was I don't remember the cost being that much, the study session, and I could be wrong. I'm not gonna, that's
No,
fine.
no, I think you're right. I think he said between 150,000, somewhere around there, but he didn't.
I didn't know the exact, and I thought I said I don't know the exact number, but I'm thinking around 150.
Yeah, okay. All right.
Sorry. Councilmember Johnstone, then Richardson.
I didn't even put my hand up.
Councilmember Richardson.
I think what council is expressing in a sense is, I feel like we talked about this, but then they're saying, well, we're not sure where this is coming from. So from that study session, what we understood to now, could you explain some of the differences or even the special amenities that we have now presented to us versus from the study session? Because there are some things I think that are very valuable and worthy of that have a price point, but I don't think council was aware of some of those things. And so I don't know if you can go into explanation of what that electric thing is capable of. I don't know if that was something that was talked about then, because that's a big point of it, right?
Yeah, so I mean, the electrical is the biggest. We originally it just had a power panel for its own speakers and microphone, right? We decided to pull all the electrical from the entire park and put it in that building. So you have a much bigger amperage panel that'll be able to handle hundreds of vendors plugged into it, food trucks plugged into it, and that it's designed to do that. So if you were, and the Lacey Spring Fair is kind of where the idea came from, is they have these giant spider boxes where everyone plugs into it and it all runs from one spot. So we wanted to do something similar with that and have that same availability for events in our park, because the biggest problem we have in any event, and anyone that's held any event in our park knows, is we don't have enough power. You plug in, you pop breakers, you do whatever. This fixes that problem.
And that is not something that was talked about at the study session.
No, because that wasn't something, we knew we were going to increase the power. We just know how much we could get out of it.
I think that's the dilemma, is we're seeing this big price point change and we're like, where's it going? Why is it happening? What's it for? And I think we're just kind of blindsided here and trying to figure out the reason.
Councilmember Hess.
Going through my notes, March 28th is when we discussed the design plans, the updates, and having a report from the Parks Commission of, we want this design. Chamber said we like this design. Then we kind of went and we presented after that to the city council that, hey, here's what the design was going to be. We did discuss that the electrical was going to be pulled in, just did not. The one thing that was not known, and as you pointed out, is that we did not know what the costs were going to be. From my understanding, from discussion earlier today. The electrical, the fact that we're bringing it all in and putting it into one point of contact, one box, and upgrading it, that's going to save in the future of having to have at least one public works person there to constantly fix a breaker or be available to do that. The stage apron being expanded, that's going to assist with seating so that people aren't, during rain or right after rain, there's not mud. The demolition of pavilion, it took us a while to make that decision. We came up with that around that time frame, March, April. And then, as I said earlier, the stage. What I'm trying to get to is that these are things that we did not know what the cost was going to be until they did that change proposal. And we have to also take into account that inflation has actually brought up labor costs are a little bit more expensive and supply costs are more expensive. So part of that may also be in that $200,000 we're asking.
Councilmember Kaminsky, Leonard Richardson. So you haven't spoken yet. Go ahead.
I would like to make a motion unless Joe wants to.
Let's see is there further comments on this?
I was just thinking that, I like the idea. I would just hope in the future that before something's presented, that council would have some kind of knowledge on it. And we did have these notes here, but it wasn't in depth. And I think that's the dilemma here, but I like the idea, but I just want to, as far as city staff goes, we don't like to be blindsided with things that we're not sure of until the day of the action is required. So that would be wise.
And we also normally do a study session as well to prep some of these items like this. But we would do it on almost everything. I don't know why we didn't do it on this one particularly. I mean, we did early, but we didn't have the exact numbers and figures. It would have been nice to have a second one with those updated numbers. I should get that. Councilor Crossman.
Trying to think how to word my words in a way that, so I think we need the stage. It's one of the few things that I'm actually really for that we spend taxpayer money on. If you guys pay attention to what I think we should spend money on. But as I have said in the previous vote when this thing, I am not a fan of how it all went down. And I'm very irritated, and I'm very irritated at how this change order came about because it did not, I would have objected the way that Cody is saying that it come down. With that being said, we're kind of stuck now, so I move to approve the change order.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, my Councilor Kaminsky. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Brooks.
I would like to add that I don't feel blindsided by any of this. I've had ample opportunity to talk to city staff and I feel confident in moving forward.
Councilor Brooks, anyone else? All right, we'll do a roll call vote then. Councilmember Kaminsky, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councilor Brooks?
Yes.
Councilor Hess?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
No.
Councilmember Crossman?
Yes.
Councilmember Richardson?
Yes.
Councilmember Johnstone?
Yes.
Thank you. Councilor. Carries. I wasn't going to. All right. Thank you, council, and we'll get to work on that. The city stage is looking great already. Look even better here. Now we get that done. All right, moving on to old business. There's none scheduled. Moving on to standing council committee reports. We got the Public Safety Committee.
No meeting.
Moving on to Public Services Committee.
We had our meeting this afternoon, the stage, which we just discussed. We also talked, we were briefed on the temporary sign code of whether there was going to be a change to it or not. And what we're talking about is temporary signs of like the feather signs and banners, things like that. And it was recommended that no change be made. The justification for that is that within the county, we are very liberal with our temporary signs compared to the other municipalities in the area. We give extra time for them to be available and such. One of the things that came out of the discussion is that if somebody needs to get a sign put in, they can put in for a grant through the beautification process and maybe get a grant to help put up a sign, just as one business did across the street from the middle school. I forgot the name of it, not Wentworth. But they can do something like that. Another thing is that I made a recommendation of maybe we reach out to the Chamber of Commerce find out from the chamber what the businesses are in need of, because as we continue to develop our central business district and other businesses within the city, they're not all on the main strip. So we need to try to find a way to help those businesses that happen to be off the main strip a little bit. So we maybe working with the chamber and finding out how we can go about doing something that's productive for businesses. We also discussed the text code change, which was passed. And then we received the packet for the EIC, which was presented in March of 2023. And Director Colt's going to email that out to all the council members so that everybody is able to take a look at what the proposal was, where we stand at this time, so we can have a future discussion about it. And then other than that, nothing else was discussed.
All right, thank you. Moving on to Finance Committee.
Oh, that's me, no meeting.
All right. Moving on to Mayor, City Administrator, Staff Reports. Todd, do you want to go first?
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning, council. A couple updates for you on the new employee front. We have a Public Works Streets Department employee that will start Monday, October 2nd. We have a new Public Services Assistant Planner employee that will also start October 2nd. We have a Police Department entry-level officer that will start October 1st. And we have a second Police Department entry-level officer tentatively in the November timeframe. So good news on that. I attended the South Sound Military Community Partnership retreat last Friday, just before the City Council retreat. We discussed extensively the housing shortage and the shortage of affordable housing. One of the main factors or the main issues affecting the military right now is the lack of daycares. There's just not nearly enough daycares to allow people to go to work. And so that's a huge issue, and they're looking into how to help that. And then the other big topic was the I-5 Nisqually Bridge replacement and the impacts of that. And just surrounding that conversation was before we start repairing I-5 and closing portions of I-5 that we need to finish the projects in Yelm first. To prepare for the impacts of the I-5. So that could be to our advantage as we move forward. So that was it was a good retreat, good discussion. They do a lot of lobbying in the legislature to get funding for various projects that impact our community. Pierce County, JBLM is their focus. And so they were a big part of getting the transportation package last time that received funding for our roundabouts. That was a big factor for them. So anyway, that's all I got, unless anybody has any questions for me.
Questions? All right, for me, I was happy that everyone attended the council retreat on Friday. That was great. A lot of the items that we discussed, we'll be seeing here in the next couple of months over the study sessions. Some of the bigger items as well that's requested, including the transportation projects. We'll get a bigger analysis at our council retreat next year with the new council at the end of March. So mark your calendars. We're trying to coordinate with staff as well. So we have the staff retreat, management retreat, as well as the council at the same time. They'll overlap slightly. But yeah, other than that, we're getting started with the 100-year celebration planning. I'm sure some of you saw the email today asking for a volunteer, just one. We've got about 10 already that are on that council or on that committee, and planning is starting. So excited for that. And then got a Thurston EDC meeting tomorrow, and they're going to be here at our local community center. So it'll be good to host them for the Thurston Economic Development Council. That's all I got. Start with how about Councilmember Minsky?
Okay, I had Nisqually River Council meeting last week, and we had a presentation from the growth management people, Department of Fish and Wildlife, and then we had a Mashel River toxin study update. And what was really cool about that was, as we were going through the presentation, one other member of the council put up their hand, and they were noticing that there were, in their maps and everything, there were no downstream toxins coming from Yelm. but there were from Eatonville. And I got all puffed up and I'm like, well, we have a brand new water reclamation facility and bio dryers from Europe and all this fancy stuff. I said, you should call Cody and get Eatonville straightened out. So I don't know if he called you, but I gave him your number. So that was fun. And then I've been told that the wind statue that the Arts Commission has chosen, the ponderosa tree that will be in the wind, has arrived at Public Works and they will be putting it up in the month of October. And for the River Council, they have a couple of events. The annual salmon bake, I think it's the Land Trust Salmon Bake, will be at the DuPont Cultural Center on October 8th. And there's a Nisqually Watershed Festival down on the Billy Franks Refuge. Crafts and Science for the Kids. It's a family event. It's free. And that is September 30th, this coming Saturday. That's my report.
Thank you. Councilmember Brooks.
Yeah, absolutely. So yesterday was the dog park groundbreaking, which I attended with the mayor, Kaminsky, and Johnstone, and city staff. Before that was the City of Yelm exit audit interview, which proved we're mostly in compliance, which I think is great. The council retreat, of course, I was at as well, and overdose awareness. There was an overdose awareness event at the Yelm Senior Center, and that was hosted by Thurston County Public Health. Me and some others were there, and I think it's really important that we each become advocates as peers to carry resources for when accidents like that happen, because you just don't know when it will. On another note, there was a study meeting the Friday before that, where we got a presentation about rural transit. If you don't know what rural transit is, it's not like inner city transit. It's a completely different bus that could probably seat about 30 people, and it's completely free, but there's a stop right next to Habitat for Humanity, and you can get on that and you can go to Rainier, you can go to Eatonville, you can go to Tenino, you can go wherever you want in the rural spots. They'll even make accommodations if you need picked up somewhere else. They're expanding that, and they'll expand it even more once they get more drivers. And did I mention it's free? I think that's really amazing. A presentation on the public safety tax, which will be on our ballot, from Commissioner Gary Edwards, and also the sheriff, was very educational. And there will be another opportunity for the public to learn about that public safety tax when the sheriff does a town hall on 10/4. So October 4th at the community center, the sheriff will be here, so y'all can learn about that. Then there was a historical plaque unveiling, which many of us attended, and the Yelm Skate Park Graffiti Day. It was one of many.
Hey.
One more thing.
One more thing.
The coffee with a cop is the same day as the sheriff town hall. So you can go see our cops and then the sheriff all in one day. So shiplap in the morning and then go to the community center in the evening. And no, dinner is not served. There's no coffee there. I've seen that question be asked. But go there and find out what you need to know. And that's really it.
All right. Anything else?
No.
Councilmember S.
Nothing to report to have upcoming meetings. Nothing at this time.
Councilmember Smith.
I attended the Law and Justice Council meeting. And they talked a lot about just the updated crime trends in Thurston County. And then also we discussed a restorative justice program that they want to start implementing, where if both the victim and the person committing the crime want to make amends, they will help them do that. And we also learned there is a hotline for the Blake bill, because there's so many questions out there, and the hotline is available to judges and prosecutors and police officers and everybody. And that's it.
Hotline Blake. Thank you. Councilmember Crossman.
You'll notice what the cones by AMPM call again?
Delineator posts.
Delineator posts. Yeah, we can sort of officially call we put in. Some people talk about that, but that roundabout 5 corners is 2025. So be on the lookout for that. of that, I'm good to go.
All right, thank you. Councilman Richardson.
Yes, so that coffee with the cop, did they purposefully leave out donuts?
You also have to pay for your own coffee.
Oh, man.
It's not free coffee.
I'm gonna go. Okay. Yeah, I went, the council retreat was very good. That was very enjoyable. I felt like, there was a lot of transparency, a lot of information given. Also, thank you for the Olive Garden. The mayor ordered minestrone, which everybody thought he should have ordered zuppa toscana, because if you get stuff from Olive Garden, of course you get zuppa toscana. So that's the mayor's minestrone. You probably had to take it home and eat it, because nobody else probably wanted to take it, but it's okay. But thank you for that. Appreciate it. And very educational. Feel like we learned a lot. But yeah, next time, zuppa toscana.
Thank you for the positive comments. Councilor Johnstone.
I vote for pasta fagioli myself. The thing with Councilmember Brooks that we attended at the Yelm Senior Center was the naloxone training put on by the Thurston County Public Health Services. I think it's important to note that Washington has a standing order for naloxone where anyone can get it to carry on them. They do have a website where you can order once a month to get your own to keep in your purse or your car. And then it was asked at the training if Yelm Community Schools had the naloxone available in their schools. And there wasn't a for sure answer, but from what we interpreted, it was no. Earlier that week, there was a 12-year-old in another district in Washington that overdosed at the middle school from taking a fentanyl lace pill, but their school nurse did have naloxone on them and the child was saved. I did email Yelm Community Schools and the superintendent to see, because Thurston County Public Health will come out and do a training with any group of people. They'll provide naloxone kits to schools, to businesses. They just need people that are willing. I haven't heard back from Yelm Community Schools yet, but I strongly believe it's super important to have this in our schools.
Councilor Johnstone. All right, if there's nothing, no executive session, is there a motion to adjourn? Councilor Fossman.
Move to adjourn.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. We are adjourned. Strong.